Don't you dare walk away from me when I'm trying to save this family!" My sister Aubrey screamed across the dining room table. I stood there holding a plate of roasted chicken, my father's favorite, trying not to drop it as everyone at his 65th birthday dinner turned to stare at us. The room fell silent except for the soft jazz playing from the speakers in the corner. My younger cousin Tyler froze mid-bite, his fork suspended in the air. My Aunt Patricia set down her wine glass with a soft clink that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. "My name is Destiny. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent the last 5 years building a digital marketing consultancy called Gravora Group in Charlotte, North Carolina. We specialize in helping mid-sized manufacturing and logistics companies scale their online presence and optimize their supply chains through targeted campaigns. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, it's profitable, and it's mine. Aubrey, my sister, is 3 years younger than me. She spent the last 7 years bouncing from job to job, calling herself an entrepreneur while living in our parents' basement and burning through their retirement savings on failed ventures. She's tried selling essential oils, starting a lifestyle blog, becoming a personal stylist, and most recently, launching a consulting business that has produced exactly 0 clients in 8 months. But somehow, I'm the fraud in the family. "Aubrey, this is Dad's birthday," I said quietly, setting the plate down on the sideboard. "Can we not do this right now?" "Oh, so now you care about Dad?" she shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You haven't cared about this family since you moved out and started playing businesswoman." My father, sitting at the head of the table in his favorite burgundy sweater, looked exhausted. His gray hair seemed grayer than usual, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. He opened his mouth to say something, but my mother placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. She always did that. Always protected Aubrey from the consequences of her own behavior. I took a deep breath and introduced myself to the moment with the kind of calm I'd learned from years of client negotiations. "Everyone, I'm sorry for the disruption. My name is Destiny, for those of you who somehow forgot in the last 30 seconds, and I was just trying to bring Dad his dinner. But apparently, my sister has something more important to discuss." Aubrey's face flushed red. She was standing now, her hands braced on the table, her perfectly curled blonde hair bouncing as she shook with rage. "Don't try to make me look crazy. You're the one who's been lying to everyone for years." "What exactly have I been lying about?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Your company!" She practically spat the words. "Gravora Group. What kind of name is that anyway? It sounds fake. It sounds like something you made up to impress people." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Gravora Group was a combination of the Latin words for gravity and growth, representing our mission to help businesses find solid ground and expand. But explaining that to Aubrey would be like explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "My company is very real," I said simply. "Prove it," Aubrey challenged, crossing her arms over her chest. "Prove to everyone here that you actually run a legitimate business and you're not just pretending to be successful to make me look bad." There it was. The truth buried under all the accusations and theatrics. This wasn't about my business. This was about her desperate need to tear me down so she could feel better about her own failures. "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said calmly. "But if it makes you feel better, I have tax returns, payroll records, client contracts, and a business license registered with the state of North Carolina. Would you like to see them?" "Those could all be faked," Aubrey said quickly, too quickly. She'd thought about this. She'd prepared for this moment. My Uncle Jerome cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Aubrey, sweetheart, maybe we should just enjoy dinner and talk about this later." "No." Aubrey's voice cracked with emotion. "Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to know what she's really been doing." I watched her carefully, noting the way her hands trembled slightly, the way her eyes darted around the room seeking validation. She was scared, desperate, and desperate people did dangerous things. "What is it you think I've been doing?" I asked softly. Aubrey's smile turned sharp, triumphant, I hired private investigators to look into your so-called company, and they're going to be here any minute to tell everyone the truth about you." The room erupted. My mother gasped. My father's face went pale. Tyler's eyes went wide. My Aunt Patricia actually dropped her wine glass, and it shattered on the hardwood floor, sending red liquid spreading like blood across the polished surface. I just stood there, my face carefully neutral, and thought about how I'd been expecting this for weeks. I grew up in a house where love was conditional and attention was a zero-sum game. If Aubrey got praise, I got silence. If I achieved something, it was expected. If Aubrey tried something and failed, it was brave. The rules were never spoken aloud, but they were absolute. When I graduated high school with a full academic scholarship to a good university, my parents took me to dinner at a chain restaurant. We sat in a booth. They ordered appetizers, and my father said he was proud, but also concerned about how I'd manage being away from home. My mother spent most of the meal talking about how Aubrey was going through a difficult time, adjusting to being the only child left at home. When Aubrey barely graduated high school 3 years later, my parents threw her a party with a rented hall, a catered buffet, and a cake shaped like a diploma. They invited everyone we knew. My father gave a speech about perseverance, and my mother cried happy tears. I flew home from college for the weekend, smiled in photos, and flew back the next day feeling like a ghost in my own family. The pattern continued through college. I worked 2 part-time jobs to cover what my scholarship didn't, graduated with honors, and got my first job at a small marketing firm in Charlotte. My parents came to my graduation, sat through the ceremony, took me to lunch, and drove home that same afternoon. They didn't stay to help me move into my first apartment or celebrate with my friends. When Aubrey enrolled in community college, dropped out after 1 semester, and came home crying about how the professors didn't understand her creative approach to learning, my parents held her while she sobbed and told her she was too special for traditional education. They said the system was broken, not her. I stopped expecting anything from them after that. I stopped calling to share good news. I stopped inviting them to work events or celebrating milestones with them. I built my life quietly and separately, and I was happier for it. But Aubrey couldn't leave it alone. She needed to prove that my success was an illusion, that I wasn't really better than her, that everything I'd built was somehow fake or unfair or undeserved. And now, standing in my father's dining room with everyone staring at me, I realized she'd finally gone too far. "When are these investigators supposed to arrive?" I asked, my voice calm. Aubrey checked her phone, her smile growing wider. "They said 7:30. It's 7:25 now, so any minute." I glanced at my own phone, hidden in my pocket. I had 3 unread messages from Beverly, my attorney, and 2 from Caleb, my IT director. They were ready. Everything was in place. "I need to use the restroom," I said, moving toward the hallway. Aubrey's eyes narrowed. "You're not going anywhere. You're going to stay right here and face the truth." "I'm going to the bathroom, Aubrey. Unless you want to follow me in there, I suggest you let me go." She hesitated, then stepped aside, and I walked down the hallway to my parents' guest bathroom. I locked the door behind me, pulled out my phone, and read the messages quickly. "Beverly, everything is set. The investigators have been briefed. The officers are standing by. Just give the signal when you're ready. Caleb, data logs are clean and ready to present. The backup evidence is uploaded to the secure server. You've got this, boss." I typed back quick responses to both of them, then looked at myself in the mirror. My face was calm, composed, but my heart was racing. This was it. This was the moment when everything Aubrey had done was going to come crashing down on her. Part of me felt bad for her. Part of me remembered the little girl who used to follow me around and beg me to play dolls with her. But that little girl had grown into a woman who was trying to destroy my livelihood out of jealousy and spite. And I couldn't let that slide. I washed my hands, dried them carefully, and walked back out to the dining room. Everyone was exactly where I'd left them, frozen in various states of discomfort and anticipation. Aubrey was pacing near the window, checking her phone every few seconds. My father had his head in his hands. My mother was crying quietly. Tyler caught my eye and gave me a small, supportive nod. The doorbell rang. Aubrey's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. She practically ran to the front door, her heels clicking rapidly on the hardwood. I followed slowly, my hands in my pockets, my expression neutral. This was going to be bad, but it wasn't going to be bad for me. Aubrey flung the door open to reveal two men in dark suits. They looked professional, serious, and completely uninterested in the family drama playing out in front of them. The taller one, a man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair and sharp gray eyes, carried a leather briefcase. The shorter one, younger and stockier with a military bearing, held a tablet. "Thank you so much for coming," Aubrey gushed, stepping aside to let them enter. "Everyone's waiting. This is going to be amazing." The taller man nodded politely. "I'm Gerald, and this is my colleague Paul. We're from Clearview Investigations. You hired us to investigate Gravora Group and its owner, Destiny." "That's right," Aubrey said, her voice practically singing with anticipation. "And you found everything, didn't you? You found proof that she's been lying?" Gerald and Paul exchanged a glance that I recognized immediately. I'd seen that look before in business meetings when someone was about to deliver news that nobody wanted to hear. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately first," Gerald suggested carefully. "No." Aubrey grabbed his arm. "No, everyone needs to hear this. That's the whole point. I want everyone to know what she really is." Gerald sighed and set his briefcase down on the coffee table. Paul pulled up files on his tablet. The family crowded around, drawn by morbid curiosity and the promise of scandal. "As requested," Gerald began, his voice formal and detached, "we conducted a thorough investigation into Gravora Group. We reviewed business registration documents, tax filings, client contracts, employee records, and financial statements." Aubrey was bouncing on her toes, barely able to contain her excitement. "And we found," Gerald continued, pausing for effect, "that Gravora Group is a fully legitimate, properly registered, and apparently quite successful business. It has been operating for 5 years, currently employs 9 people, and maintains contracts with 17 active clients in the manufacturing and logistics sectors. Annual revenue appears to be in the mid-6-figure range." The silence that followed was deafening. Aubrey's face went from flushed pink to bone white in seconds. "What?" she whispered. "Your sister's company is real," Paul said bluntly, looking up from his tablet. "Very real. In fact, it's one of the more impressive small businesses we've investigated." Aubrey shook her head violently. No, that can't be right. You didn't look hard enough. She's hiding something. She has to be hiding something." Gerald's expression remained professionally neutral, but I saw a flicker of distaste in his eyes. "Miss Aubrey, we spent 4 weeks on this investigation. We were very thorough. There is no evidence of fraud, deception, or illegitimate business practices." "Then you're incompetent!" Aubrey shrieked. "I paid you $3,000 to find the truth." "We did find the truth," Paul said coldly. "It's just not the truth you wanted." My mother started crying harder. My father looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Tyler was trying very hard not to smile. My aunt and uncle were whispering to each other, their expressions shocked. I stood off to the side, saying nothing, my arms crossed over my chest. I was waiting, because I knew what came next. Gerald opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. However, during our investigation, we did discover something concerning, something that has nothing to do with Gravora Group's legitimacy, and everything to do with how certain parties attempted to access information about the company. Aubrey's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" Paul tapped his tablet and turned it to face the room. "During our investigation, we discovered that someone attempted to gain unauthorized access to Gravora Group's internal systems, multiple times. These attempts included trying to log in with stolen credentials, attempting to breach the company's client database, and installing software designed to harvest sensitive business information. The room went very still. My father slowly lifted his head from his hands. My mother stopped crying. Everyone was staring at Paul's tablet, at the screen full of login attempts and failed password entries. "We traced these attempts," Gerald said quietly, "and they originated from this address, from this house." My father stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. "That's impossible. None of us would do something like that." "The attempts were made using login credentials created with Miss Destiny's personal information," Paul continued, reading from his tablet. "Name, date of birth, email address, even her college identification number. Someone went to considerable effort to impersonate her in order to access her own company's systems." All eyes turned to Aubrey. Her face had gone from white to gray. Her hands were shaking. She took a step backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. "I didn't," she whispered. "I didn't do that." "The IP address traces back to this location," Gerald said, his voice hard now, all pretense of politeness gone. "And the credit card used to purchase the data harvesting software was registered to a Howard living at this address." My father's face drained of color. "What credit card?" Paul handed him a printout. "This one, the MasterCard ending in 7432. My father stared at the paper, his hands beginning to tremble. "That's my card, the one I gave Aubrey for emergencies." Every head in the room swiveled to look at Aubrey. She backed up until she hit the wall, her eyes wide and panicked. "I can explain," she started, but her voice was barely audible. "Explain what?" my father demanded, his voice rising for the first time all evening. "Explain why you used my credit card to commit a crime." "It's not a crime," Aubrey shouted, her voice breaking. "I was trying to protect this family. I was trying to prove that she's been lying to all of us." "By breaking into my company's computer systems?" I asked softly, speaking for the first time since the investigators arrived. "By trying to steal confidential client information. By committing data theft and fraud." Aubrey's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to watch you succeed at everything while I fail at everything. You don't know what it's like to be the disappointment." "So you decided to destroy what I built?" I asked, my voice still calm but with an edge of steel now. "You decided that if you couldn't be successful, I shouldn't be either." "I just wanted everyone to see the truth," she screamed. "I wanted them to see that you're not better than me." The room erupted. My mother was sobbing openly now. My father was shouting at Aubrey, demanding to know what she'd been thinking. My aunt and uncle were trying to edge toward the door. Tyler just sat there, watching the chaos unfold with wide eyes. Gerald held up a hand. "There's more." Everyone fell silent again, which seemed impossible given the noise level seconds before. "We also discovered," Gerald said, pulling more documents from his briefcase, "that someone contacted several of Gravora Group's clients over the past 3 months, posing as a business journalist. This person asked questions designed to cast doubt on the company's credibility and legitimacy." He handed me a document. I scanned it quickly, my jaw tightening. Aubrey had called 6 of my clients, using a fake name, claiming to be writing an exposé on fraudulent small businesses. She'd asked them pointed questions about whether they'd verified my credentials, whether they'd actually seen my office, whether they'd checked references. "We traced the phone number," Paul said. "It's a prepaid cell phone purchased at a convenience store 3 miles from here. The purchase was caught on security camera." He tapped his tablet again, and a grainy security camera image appeared. It showed Aubrey, clear as day, buying a phone at a gas station. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. My father sat down heavily, his face in his hands. "Did any of my clients believe her?" I asked, my voice tight. No, Gerald said. Every one of them either ignored her or contacted you directly to let you know about the strange call. That's actually how we confirmed the connection. Your IT director provided us with the emails. I looked at Aubrey, and for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not as my younger sister, not as the family's protected child, but as someone who had actively tried to destroy everything I'd worked for. Someone who had broken laws and violated trust and hurt people, all because she couldn't stand to see me happy. Aubrey, my father said, his voice hollow. Tell me you didn't do this. Please tell me you didn't do this. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. She looked like a fish drowning in air. We've already forwarded our findings to local law enforcement, Gerald said, his tone almost apologetic now. They're aware of the situation and will be following up. Law enforcement? My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. You mean the police? Yes, Paul confirmed. Unauthorized computer access, attempted data theft, and fraud are serious criminal offenses. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department will be investigating. Aubrey finally found her voice. No, you can't do that. Destiny, tell them not to do that. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. I looked at her for a long moment, weighing my words carefully. Part of me, a small part that remembered sharing a bedroom with her when we were kids, wanted to help her, wanted to make this go away. But the larger part, the part that had built a business from nothing while she'd actively tried to tear it down, knew what I had to do. I can't do that, I said quietly. Because it's not a misunderstanding. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her face crumpled. Please, Destiny. Please don't do this to me. I'm your sister. And you tried to destroy my company, I said, my voice steady. You tried to steal from my clients. You tried to ruin my reputation. What did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd finally admit the truth, she screamed. I thought everyone would finally see that you're not as perfect as you pretend to be. I never said I was perfect, I replied. I just worked hard, and apparently that was enough to make you hate me. My mother stood up, her face blotchy from crying. Destiny, you can't let them arrest your sister. Think about the family. Think about what this will do to us. I turned to look at her, and something inside me that had been held together with duct tape and determination finally snapped. Think about the family? Where was that concern when Aubrey was breaking into my computer systems? Where was that concern when she was calling my clients and trying to destroy my business? Where was that concern every single time she failed at something, and you made excuses for her while expecting me to just accept being ignored? My mother flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. None of this is fair, I said, my voice rising for the first time. I've spent my entire life being the responsible one, the successful one, the one who didn't need help or attention or praise. And the one time I ask for accountability, you tell me to think about the family. Well, I am thinking about the family. I'm thinking about the fact that you enabled this. You made her think it was okay to act like this, because you've never once held her accountable for anything. My father raised his head. Destiny, that's enough. No, I said firmly. It's not enough. It's not nearly enough. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked? Do you know what it took to build Gravora Group from nothing? I did it without your help, without your support, without your attention. And she tried to destroy it because she was jealous. And you want me to just let it go? To protect her from consequences again? The room was silent. Even Aubrey had stopped crying, staring at me with wide, shocked eyes. I'm done protecting people who won't protect me, I said. I'm done being invisible, and I'm done pretending that any of this is okay. Before anyone could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sharp, official, unmistakable. Gerald and Paul exchanged glances. "That would be law enforcement," Gerald said. My father stood frozen, staring at the door like it was the entrance to hell. My mother grabbed Aubrey's arm, pulling her close as if she could shield her from what was coming. Tyler slowly got up from his chair and moved to stand beside me, a silent show of support that meant more than he probably knew. I walked to the door and opened it. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch, their expressions professional and serious. Behind them, a plainclothes detective with a badge clipped to her belt looked past me into the house. "Good evening," the detective said. "I'm Detective Simmons with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. We're here to speak with Aubrey regarding some allegations of computer crimes." I stepped aside, my heart pounding but my face calm. "She's inside." The officers entered, and the room seemed to shrink around them. Aubrey pressed herself against the wall, her face sheet white, her whole body trembling. My father moved to stand between her and the officers, a futile gesture of protection. "Aubrey," Detective Simmons said, her voice firm but not unkind. "We need to talk to you about some unauthorized access to computer systems and some other related activities. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you." The Miranda warning hung in the air like a death sentence. My mother started crying again, harder this time, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. My father's face had gone from pale to red, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. "Wait," Aubrey said, her voice small and broken. "Wait, please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just trying to protect my family. I thought Destiny was lying to everyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You can explain all of that at the station," Detective Simmons said. "But right now, we need you to come with us." One of the uniformed officers pulled out a pair of handcuffs. The metal caught the light from the dining room chandelier, glinting cold and unforgiving. "Do you really need those?" my father asked, his voice cracking. "She's not dangerous. She's not going to run." "It's standard procedure, sir," the officer replied, not unkindly. "We'll make this as easy as possible." Aubrey held out her wrists, tears streaming down her face. The officer cuffed her hands in front of her body, the metal clicking closed with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire house. "Destiny," Aubrey said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, please don't let them do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. Just please make this stop." I looked at her, at my little sister in handcuffs, crying and begging, and I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no revenge, just a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "I can't make it stop," I said quietly. "You did this to yourself." The officers began to lead her toward the door. My mother tried to follow, but my father held her back. She reached out toward Aubrey, her face twisted with anguish. "We'll get you a lawyer," my mother called out. "We'll fix this. Don't worry, baby, we'll fix this." But even she seemed to realize how hollow those words were. As the officers escorted Aubrey out of the house, she looked back at me one last time. Her face was blotchy and red, her perfect hair disheveled, her mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. She looked nothing like the confident, smug woman who'd opened the door to the investigators 30 minutes ago. She looked destroyed. The door closed behind them, and the house fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Gerald and Paul quietly gathered their papers and packed up their briefcases, giving the family privacy in the aftermath of the disaster. "We'll send you copies of everything," Gerald said to me as they headed for the door, "for your records and for any civil proceedings you might want to pursue." I nodded, not trusting my voice. They left, and it was just family again. But it didn't feel like family. It felt like the aftermath of an explosion. My father sank into his chair at the dining table, his birthday dinner forgotten and cold. My mother stood in the middle of the room, hugging herself and crying. My aunt and uncle were gathering their things, clearly desperate to escape. Tyler stood next to me, his hands in his pockets, watching everything with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You did this," my mother said suddenly, her voice thick with tears and anger. She was looking at me. "You could have stopped this. You could have told them not to press charges. But you let them take her away." "She broke the law," I said, my voice flat. "Multiple laws. I didn't do that to her." "She did it to herself." "She's your sister!" my mother shouted. "How can you be so cold? How can you just stand there and watch them arrest her?" "How could she try to destroy everything I've built?" I shot back. "How could she break into my company's systems? How could she call my clients and lie about me? How is any of that okay?" "She was just confused. She was hurting," my mother said, grasping for excuses like a drowning person grasping for air. "You've always had everything so easy. You don't understand what it's like to struggle." I laughed, a bitter, harsh sound that didn't sound like me at all. "Easy? You think my life has been easy? I worked 3 jobs to get through college. I spent years building my business from nothing. I did it all without help from anyone in this family. And you call that easy?" "You never needed us," my mother said. And there was something accusatory in her tone, like my independence was a personal insult. "You never asked for help. You just left and did everything on your own. Because every time I accomplished something, you ignored it," I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Every time I succeeded, you made it about how Aubrey was struggling. I stopped asking for your attention because I learned I was never going to get it." My father finally spoke, his voice rough. "That's not true. We've always been proud of you." "Have you?" I asked. "Then why is this the first time you've ever seen where I work or what I do? Why have you never asked about my business or my clients or my employees? Why do I have to defend my success instead of celebrating it?" He didn't have an answer for that. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Beverly, my attorney. "It's done. They arrested her. What happens now?" Her response came within seconds. "I'll handle everything. You just take care of yourself. You did the right thing." I wasn't sure I believed that, but I appreciated her saying it. Tyler touched my arm gently. "You okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't know what I am." "You're brave," he said simply. "And you're right. She needed to face consequences. It's the only way she'll ever change." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that this would be a wake-up call for Aubrey, that she'd use this as an opportunity to get her life together. But deep down, I knew the truth. She'd blame me. She'd make herself the victim. And my parents would support that narrative because it was easier than admitting they'd enabled her for years. My aunt and uncle slipped out without saying goodbye. I didn't blame them. What do you say after watching someone get arrested at a birthday party? My father stood up slowly, moving like an old man. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. "I need to go to the station. I need to see about getting her released. They probably won't release her tonight," I said quietly. "Not for something like this." "I have to try," he said. He looked at my mother. "Come on, let's go." They left without another word to me. No goodbye, no acknowledgement, nothing. Just like always. When the door closed behind them, Tyler and I were alone in the house. I walked over to the dining table and looked at the spread of food that no one had touched. My father's birthday cake sat in the middle, a chocolate layer cake with blue frosting and unlit candles. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said to the empty room. Tyler came over and put an arm around my shoulders. "This isn't your fault." "Isn't it?" I asked. "If I'd just kept my mouth shut about my business, if I'd just let her believe what she wanted to believe, none of this would have happened. That's not true, and you know it, Tyler said firmly. She broke the law. She tried to hurt you. That's on her, not you. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just blown up my entire family. Come on, Tyler said. Let's get out of here. This place is depressing. We left the house, leaving the uneaten food and the unlit birthday cake behind. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. There were 3 from Beverly, 2 from Caleb, and 1 from my business partner, Vanessa, who must have heard something through the grapevine. I opened Vanessa's message first. Just heard what happened. Holy shit. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I typed back. I'm fine. It's over. I'll fill you in tomorrow. As I drove away from my childhood home, I realized that I meant it. It was over. The years of watching Aubrey fail and being blamed for her failures. The years of being invisible in my own family. The years of pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. It was finally, definitively, over. And I didn't know whether to feel relieved or heartbroken. The next few days passed in a blur. Aubrey was arraigned and released on bail that my parents paid for by taking out a second mortgage on their house. They didn't tell me that directly. I heard it through Tyler, who heard it from our Aunt Patricia. Beverly filed a civil suit on behalf of Gravora Group, seeking damages for the attempted data breach and the harm to our business reputation. The amount was significant, meant to send a message. You can't attack someone's livelihood without consequences. My parents didn't call me. They didn't text. They didn't reach out at all. Aubrey, however, did. She sent me a long, rambling email full of apologies and excuses and justifications. She said she'd been in a dark place, that she'd felt worthless watching me succeed, that she'd made terrible choices, but she was still my sister, and didn't that count for something? I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't have the energy to engage. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into client projects, took on new accounts, and hired 2 more employees to keep up with demand. Gravora Group was growing, thriving even, and I clung to that success like a lifeline. Caleb, my IT director, stopped by my office one afternoon with a concerned look on his face. Boss, you doing okay? You've been putting in some crazy hours lately. I'm fine, I said automatically. He raised an eyebrow. You're not fine. Nobody who's fine works until 9 p.m. every night. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my tired eyes. What am I supposed to do, Caleb? Go home and think about how I got my sister arrested? Sit around feeling guilty? You didn't get her arrested, he said firmly. She got herself arrested. You just refused to cover it up. My family doesn't see it that way. Then your family is wrong, Caleb said bluntly. Look, I've been doing cybersecurity for 15 years. What she did? That's serious. She could have compromised our clients' data. She could have destroyed businesses. What you did took guts. I appreciated his support, but it didn't erase the hollow feeling in my chest. That weekend, I met Tyler for coffee at a small cafe in uptown Charlotte. He showed up with dark circles under his eyes and a worried expression. How are you holding up? He asked as we sat down with our drinks. I'm managing, I said. How's the family? He grimaced. Tense. Your mom isn't speaking to anyone who doesn't agree that you're the villain in all this. Your dad is stressed about the legal bills. And Aubrey is playing the victim hard, telling everyone who'll listen that you're trying to destroy her life. I sipped my coffee, letting the bitter liquid ground me. Of course she is. For what it's worth, Tyler said. I think you did the right thing. So does my mom, though she won't say it in front of your mom. Thanks, I said quietly. That means a lot. There's something else, Tyler said, his expression darkening. Aubrey has been posting about this on social media. Nothing specific enough to get in legal trouble, but lots of vague posts about betrayal and family and forgiveness. Her friends are eating it up. I pulled out my phone and looked at her profile. Sure enough, there were half a dozen posts in the last week. One showed a photo of her crying with the caption, "Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you love most." Another was a quote about fake people and real struggles. "She's weaponizing social media," I said flatly. "Yeah," Tyler confirmed. "And it's working. People are messaging her with support, telling her they'll pray for her, asking what happened. She's controlling the narrative." I set my phone down and looked at Tyler. "Let her. I know the truth. The courts know the truth. That's all that matters." But even as I said it, I felt a twist of anger in my gut. Even now, even after everything, she was making herself the victim, and me, the villain. And people were believing her. 3 weeks after the arrest, I received a call from Detective Simmons. She asked if I could come to the station to review some additional evidence. I agreed and brought Beverly with me. The station was busy, full of people dealing with their own crises and problems. We were shown to a small conference room where Detective Simmons was waiting with a laptop. "Thank you for coming in," she said, shaking both our hands. "I wanted to show you something we found while examining the evidence." She turned the laptop toward us. On the screen was a series of screenshots showing social media conversations between Aubrey and several of her friends. The messages were damning. In one exchange, Aubrey wrote, "I'm going to expose Destiny for the fraud she is. Everyone thinks she's so perfect, but I'm going to prove she's lying about everything." Her friend responded, "How are you going to do that?" Aubrey wrote back, "I hired investigators, and if they don't find anything, I'll make something up. I just need enough doubt to destroy her reputation." I stared at the screen, feeling cold all over. "She was planning to frame me?" "It appears so," Detective Simmons said. "These messages show premeditation. She wasn't just acting out of jealousy in the moment. She actively planned to harm your business, and she was willing to fabricate evidence if necessary." Beverly leaned forward, her lawyer brain already working. "This strengthens the criminal case significantly, and it's going to be very useful in the civil suit." "There's more," Detective Simmons said, clicking to another screenshot. "She also discussed potentially accessing your personal email and bank accounts. She didn't go through with it, probably because she didn't have the technical knowledge, but the intent was there." I felt sick. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or jealousy. This was calculated malice. "What happens now?" I asked. "The district attorney is moving forward with multiple charges," Detective Simmons said. "Computer fraud, attempted identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. With this evidence, we're looking at a strong case." As Beverly and I left the station, I felt numb. Part of me had wanted to believe that Aubrey's actions were a mistake, a moment of poor judgment. But seeing those messages, seeing the premeditation, and the willingness to destroy me completely, shattered any remaining sympathy I had. "Are you okay?" Beverly asked as we walked to our cars. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." She squeezed my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. And you're doing the right thing." I drove back to my office and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to those messages. I'm going to expose Destiny for the fraud she is. I'll make something up if I have to. My own sister had been willing to destroy me completely, and she'd only failed because she wasn't smart enough to cover her tracks. That night, I sat in my apartment and finally let myself cry. Not for what had happened, but for what I'd lost. I'd lost my family, or at least the illusion of one. I'd lost the hope that someday things might be different, that my parents might see me, that my sister might be happy for me. I'd lost the version of my life where I could have both success and family. And as much as I knew I'd made the right choice, it still hurt. The trial date was set for 3 months later. In the meantime, life continued in a strange, suspended way. I worked, I slept, I avoided family gatherings. My phone stayed silent. No calls from my parents, no texts from Aubrey. Just the occasional message from Tyler checking in. Gravora Group continued to grow. We landed a major contract with a regional manufacturing company that needed a complete digital overhaul. It was the kind of deal I'd dreamed about when I first started the business, the kind that would establish us as a serious player in the industry. Vanessa, my business partner, cornered me one afternoon as I was leaving a client meeting. She was 5 years older than me, a marketing genius who'd joined the company 2 years ago and quickly become indispensable. "We need to talk," she said, gesturing to a bench outside the office building. I sat down, already exhausted. "What's up?" "You," she said bluntly. "You're working yourself to death. You're putting in 70-hour weeks and you look like you haven't slept in a month. This needs to stop." "I'm fine," I protested. "You're not fine," Vanessa said firmly. "And I get it. You're processing a lot. But you built this company to have a life, not to hide from one." I stared at my hands, not sure how to respond. She was right, but I didn't know how to do anything else. Work was the only thing that made sense anymore. "Take a break," Vanessa urged. "Even just a few days. Go somewhere. Do something. Remember that there's more to life than this business." "The business is all I have," I said quietly. "That's not true," Vanessa said. "You have friends. You have Tyler. You have a whole life outside of your family, but you have to let yourself live it." I knew she was right, but it felt easier to bury myself in work than to face the gaping hole where my family used to be. 2 weeks before the trial, I received a call from my father. It was the first time he'd contacted me since the arrest. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Destiny," he said when I picked up, his voice heavy and tired. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "About Aubrey, about the trial, about all of this." I waited, saying nothing. He sighed, a long, weary sound. "Your mother and I have been talking with Aubrey's lawyer. They're saying the charges are serious, that she could face jail time. Real jail time, Destiny, not just probation." "I know," I said. "Detective Simmons explained the potential sentences." "You could make this go away," he said, his voice almost pleading. "You could talk to the prosecutor. Tell them you don't want to press charges. You could save your sister." "She tried to destroy my business, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "She broke into my computer systems. She called my clients and lied about me. She was planning to frame me for fraud if she couldn't find real evidence. Why would I save her from facing the consequences of that?" "Because she's family," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "Family doesn't try to destroy each other," I replied, "and I'm tired of being the one who has to sacrifice everything to keep the peace. I didn't create this situation. She did." "She was struggling," my father said. "She made mistakes." "These weren't mistakes," I said, my voice rising. "Mistakes are accidental. What she did was deliberate and calculated. She spent months planning this. She spent your money to hire investigators to try to find dirt on me. She bought illegal software to steal my data. Those aren't mistakes. That's malice." My father was silent for a long moment. "I don't know how we got here," he finally said. "I don't know how our family fell apart like this." "It didn't fall apart," I said. "It was never together. You just never noticed because you were too busy protecting Aubrey from reality." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "None of this is fair," I said. "But it's true, and I'm done pretending otherwise." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly calm. I'd finally said what I'd been thinking for years, and the world hadn't ended. The day of the trial arrived cold and gray, with heavy clouds threatening rain. I dressed carefully in a professional navy suit, pulling my hair back into a neat bun. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked harder somehow, older, like I'd aged years in just a few months. Beverly met me at the courthouse, carrying a briefcase full of evidence and documentation. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," I replied. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everything in a harsh, unflattering glow. My parents sat on one side with Aubrey and her lawyer. Tyler sat on my side, along with Vanessa and Caleb, who'd both taken the morning off to support me. Aubrey looked different. She'd cut her hair short and wore a conservative gray dress that made her look younger and more vulnerable. It was clearly a calculated choice, designed to make her appear sympathetic to the judge. When her eyes met mine, I saw no remorse there, just anger and resentment. The proceedings began, and the prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The unauthorized computer access, the attempted data theft, the fraudulent impersonation, the social media messages showing premeditation. Each piece of evidence was presented clearly and professionally. Aubrey's lawyer tried to argue that she'd acted out of concern for her family, that she'd believed I was defrauding people, and felt it was her duty to investigate. But the prosecutor dismantled that argument quickly, pointing out that her methods were illegal regardless of her intentions, and that the social media messages showed her true motives had nothing to do with protecting anyone. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the front of the courtroom and faced the judge. My voice was steady as I explained what Aubrey's actions had cost me, not just financially, but professionally and personally. I talked about the clients who'd questioned my credibility, the employees who'd worried about their jobs, the sleepless nights wondering if my business would survive her attacks. "This wasn't a family dispute," I said. "This was a deliberate attempt to destroy something I'd built from nothing, and she did it knowing full well that it was wrong." Aubrey's lawyer put her on the stand, and she cried as she testified about how jealous she'd felt, how worthless, how desperate to prove that she wasn't the failure everyone thought she was. It was a good performance, and I saw some sympathy in the judge's eyes, but it wasn't enough. After hearing all the evidence, the judge leaned back in his chair and looked at Aubrey for a long moment. "Miss Aubrey," he said, his voice firm and measured, "jealousy is a human emotion. We all experience it, but what you did went far beyond feeling jealous. You committed serious crimes, multiple crimes, over an extended period of time. You showed planning, determination, and a willingness to harm your own sister's livelihood. That is not acceptable, and it cannot be excused." He sentenced her to 18 months in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving a minimum of 9 months. He also ordered her to pay restitution to Gravora Group in the amount of $75,000 for the damages she'd caused and the security measures we'd had to implement because of her actions. Aubrey sobbed as the sentence was read. My mother buried her face in my father's shoulder. My father just stared straight ahead, his face blank with shock. I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no relief. Just an empty, echoing numbness. As the bailiff led Aubrey away, she looked back at me one last time. Her face was red and blotchy, her eyes swollen from crying. She mouthed something that might have been, "I'm sorry," or might have been, "I hate you." I couldn't tell, and it didn't matter. Outside the courtroom, my parents walked past me without a word. Tyler hugged me tightly, and Vanessa squeezed my hand. Caleb nodded approvingly and said, "Justice served." Beverly came over and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you did." "When will it feel like it?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted, "but it will. Eventually." Life after the trial settled into a new normal. Aubrey served her sentence in a minimum security facility. I heard through Tyler that she'd taken some classes and was working in the prison library. I didn't visit her. I didn't write. I needed the distance to heal. My parents and I maintained a strained, distant relationship. We exchanged brief messages on holidays. Nothing more. They made it clear they blamed me for what happened to Aubrey. I made it clear I wasn't going to apologize for protecting my business. Tyler remained my connection to the family. He'd text me updates, invite me to casual get-togethers with cousins I actually liked, and generally remind me that not everyone in my family was toxic. Gravora Group thrived. We moved to a larger office, hired 5 more employees, and expanded our services. The publicity from the trial, oddly enough, had brought in new clients who respected the fact that I'd stood up for my business and hadn't backed down. One afternoon, about 6 months after the trial, I was working in my office when Vanessa knocked on the door. "You have a visitor," she said, her expression unreadable. "Who?" I asked. "Your father." I felt my stomach drop. "Tell him I'm busy." "I think you should see him," Vanessa said gently. "He looks like he needs to say something." I sighed and nodded. "Fine. Send him in." My father walked into my office looking older than I remembered. His hair was completely gray now, and he moved slowly, like his joints hurt. He stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking at me. "Hi, Dad," I said, my voice neutral. "Hi, Destiny." He sat down in the chair across from my desk without being invited. "Your office is nice. This is a good space." "Thanks," I said. "What do you want?" He flinched at my bluntness. "I came to apologize." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Okay. I'm listening." "I should have believed you," he said, his voice rough. "About your business, about your success, about everything. I should have seen what Aubrey was doing, and I should have stopped her. Instead, I made excuses for her and expected you to just accept being hurt. That was wrong." I waited, saying nothing. "Your mother doesn't agree with me," he continued. "She still thinks you should have handled this differently, that you should have protected your sister. But I've had a lot of time to think, and I realize now that we failed you. We failed you for years, and I'm sorry." "Why now?" I asked. "Why apologize now, months after everything fell apart?" "Because Aubrey is getting out next month," he said. "And I don't want her to come home thinking she's the victim in all this. I need to be honest with myself about what happened, and honest with her about her choices. And that starts with acknowledging what we did wrong as parents." I felt something crack open in my chest, some hard, cold thing that had been frozen there for months. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more than you know." "I don't expect you to forgive us," my father said. "I don't even expect you to want a relationship with us. But I wanted you to know that I see what you've built here, and I'm proud of you." I should have said that years ago. We talked for a while longer, carefully navigating the minefield of our relationship. It wasn't a magical healing moment, and it didn't fix everything. But it was a start. After he left, I sat in my office and cried for the first time since the trial. Not sad tears exactly, but tears of release, of letting go of something I'd been holding on to for too long. Aubrey was released from prison 10 months after she was sentenced. I heard through Tyler that she moved to another city, got a job doing administrative work for a small nonprofit, and was trying to rebuild her life. She sent me a letter a few months after her release. I opened it carefully, half expecting more accusations or excuses. But instead, it was short and simple. "Destiny, I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did was wrong. I destroyed something beautiful because I couldn't stand to see you happy. I'm sorry. I hope someday I can be the kind of person who can be happy for others instead of tearing them down. I hope you're doing well, Aubrey." I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready for that, and I might never be. But I also didn't delete it or throw it away. Maybe that was progress. 2 years after my father's birthday party, Gravora Group was thriving beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd expanded to 3 cities, employed 26 people, and had a client list that included some of the biggest names in manufacturing and logistics in the Southeast. I was sitting in a board meeting, presenting our quarterly results, when I realized something. I was happy. Not just successful, not just satisfied, but genuinely happy. I'd built something real and lasting. I'd surrounded myself with people who respected me and valued what I brought to the table. I'd created a life on my own terms, and I'd done it by refusing to let someone else's jealousy and malice define me. After the meeting, Vanessa pulled me aside. "You know what today is, right?" I thought for a moment. "Oh, it's the anniversary of the arrest." 2 years, she said. "Look how far you've come." I looked around the conference room, at the employees chatting and laughing, at the wall covered with awards and client testimonials, at the future I'd built from the ashes of my family. "Yeah," I said. "I guess I have." That night, I went home to my apartment, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat on my balcony looking out over the Charlotte skyline. I thought about everything that had happened. About the night those investigators walked into my father's house. About the handcuffs clicking closed around Aubrey's wrists. About the trial and the aftermath, and all the pain in between. I thought about the girl I'd been 2 years ago, desperate for my family's approval and willing to make myself small to avoid conflict. And I thought about the woman I was now, who'd learned that sometimes the only way to protect what you've built is to let the people who want to destroy it face the consequences of their actions. Aubrey had wanted to expose me as a fraud, to prove that my success was fake. Instead, she'd exposed herself as someone willing to commit crimes out of jealousy. The handcuffs she'd orchestrated for me had ended up on her own wrists, and while I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, I recognized it for what it was: a lesson in the consequences of letting envy consume you. My parents eventually came to understand, at least partially, what had happened. My father and I maintained a careful, distant relationship. My mother and I didn't speak. And that was okay. I'd learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up for you, who support you, who celebrate your success instead of resenting it. I'd found my people. They just weren't the ones I'd grown up with. As for Aubrey, she served her full sentence and faced the consequences of her actions in every possible way. She lost her freedom, her reputation, and the respect of everyone who'd once believed in her. She struggled to find work after her release, bouncing from job to job as potential employers discovered her criminal record. The friends who'd supported her on social media during the trial disappeared when the reality of her crimes became public. She'd wanted to destroy my life, but in the end, she'd destroyed her own. And while I felt a distant sadness about that, I also recognized that it was entirely self-inflicted. She'd had choices at every step, and she'd chosen malice over honesty, jealousy over celebration, destruction over support. Those choices had natural consequences, and no amount of crying or apologizing could erase what she'd done. I reflected on the whole journey, on the moment those handcuffs clicked around her wrists, on the way her face had drained of color when she realized she'd played herself. It wasn't the revenge I'd planned, because I'd never planned revenge at all. But it was poetic, undeniable, and final. She'd spent so much energy trying to tear me down that she'd forgotten to watch her own foundation crumble beneath her. And in the end, justice didn't need my help. It just needed her to keep being exactly who she was.